Hi guys, Jonathan Fields with another episode of Good Life Project. My guest today is Karen Salmonson. Karen is a best-selling author with over 1 million books in print, and she is on a mission to help people live happier lives and really understand how to bounce back and become resilient. Karen, awesome to be hanging out with you.
Great to be here.
So we've known each other for a while now, and
Yes.
you have an incredible, I want to talk about what you do professionally, but I also want to sort of like take a step back because you've had a really interesting personal journey just in terms of your career life. Take me back to sort of when you were working in the bigger corporate world and tell me what you're up to.
Sure. Well, I started off in advertising, and I worked at like the big agencies like J. Walter Thompson and Rubicon and McCann Erickson, and I worked on the big accounts, and I found that I was creatively sort of stifled. I mean, I was doing well. I became a senior VP at like 26, but I knew I wanted to do more. I wanted to write books. In particular, I wanted to write a novel. So I kept threatening to quit.
So how many people in advertising, by the way, want to write a novel?
I know, right? Which is, I guess, what the next part is. I kept telling my parents, I want to write a novel.
Right.
And they're like, you know, Karen, you're doing well. Why would you want to leave if you're doing well?
Right, because I mean, everyone knows that novelists don't do well. They all crash and burn. Like it's a dead-end career, right?
To them, it was like crazy talk.
Right.
So I kept telling them I was going to quit, and they kept talking me out of it. So finally, I quit and didn't tell them because they kept talking me out of it, you know. So
how long after you actually quit did you actually like own up and say, oh, by the way? Was it like days, months, or years?
No, it was like, I think it was like my father called me at the office and it was like my second to last day. And my assistant said, your father's on the phone. So I figured, okay, at this point I have to fess up. So I fessed up.
Cool.
And then I wrote my first book, which was a novel. And I sold it to St. Martin's Press. And
so, but wait. Had you ever written a book before?
Never.
Have you ever written fiction before?
Never. It was like crazy talk telling my parents I was going to write a novel.
So how do you go from walking out the door at like a hotshot advertising job to saying...
A strong six-figure career in my 20s.
So
like
you
a
leave
crazy
that behind.
Salary.
And to do something that you've never done before, you have no experience doing.
No experience, nothing.
So how do you
get yourself
learn that and then actually write a first book and have it sold to a major publisher? I mean, that's like unusual.
Yeah, I guess so. But there's something to be said for, I guess, I had what I call Mr. Magoo syndrome. Do you remember Mr. Magoo? With the big, thick glasses.
I am old enough to remember that.
Right,
yeah.
Me too. I don't know if the people are listening will, but so he couldn't really see, and he would cross the street, and the cars would honk, but he kind of didn't notice, and he kind of just got to the other side of the street. That was me. Like everybody was honking, novel, you're crazy, novel. Right. But I was just like, must get to other side of the street. I just didn't I just didn't let fears overwhelm me. So I was so excited about being a published author that I was just like focused on that. Like I used to go to bookstores and envision my book on the bookshelf, and it was a novel. So I looked in the fiction section and I saw that my neighbor was going to be Salinger because my last name is Salmonson. I'm like, oh, I'll be next to Salinger.
That would be okay.
That's my neighbor. Cool, you know. And then I just kept writing. And when you're really passionate about something, you kind of don't notice fears, or you're like just so excited. And it'd be fun.
But so let me stop you there for a second, because when you think of when the public perception of writers, especially fiction writers, is they're tortured souls, and their art is just like something that takes blood from them every time they write a book. For you, radically different experience.
I just love creating. I mean, I just do. And I'll tell you, for me, suffering does not aid my creativity. Enjoying myself, being happy. In fact, hedonism aids my creativity. Like if I need a little boost, I have to do something like a little pampering to get there. Like I don't torture myself to get there. Or caffeine. Like, you know, I think if I wasn't a coffee drinker, I wouldn't have as many books published. I think I, should dedicate all my books to, the miracle of caffeine. But no, I just get passionate, and I'm really like enthusiastic about it. And then I feel like I have something that might help people. Helps to get me back. There's been studies that say when people feel like they have a calling rather than a job, they're happier. And for me, my novel, even before I was writing nonfiction, had a lot of nonfiction elements in it, a lot of philosophy and psychology in the book. It was about a girl in advertising, and it was sort of, it had a lot of philosophical stuff in there about relationships and what makes people, you know, happy. And it was all kind of mixed in
So there's
with
like
my
a lot
plot.
of foreshadowing of the career to come.
So
also.
much,
Yeah.
a lot of it. Like,
Huh, that's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. So I just was like focused on must get book published. And then I figured whatever were the principles that I did in a career that I didn't want, if I applied them, universal principles for success, to a career I did want, then I could do well there too. So if I figured, you know, what sort of seeks a certain level, or whatever I did that made me jump through layers, you know, in an ad agency very quickly, hopefully that would apply with my novel. And then it did, like even how I wound up finding an agent, even how I wound up selling it to Miramax. These are all even inspirational stories.
Wait. So you took the first one, so you sold the book?
My novel, my first
Right,
novel,
to
my
St.
first
Martin's.
book, to St. Martin's Press.
Now Miramax comes in where?
Well, Miramax comes in, well, even how, well, two quickie stories, which just show that like I was like meant to be a self-help book author somehow, because like even the ways that, so I finished up the book, and I don't have an agent. So I was freelancing at MTV, and
Doing like advertising type of stuff?
doing
or?
advertising
Okay.
stuff, interstitials they called them, little tune-in, little like 30-second movie kind of things about MTV that got you happy that you were watching MTV.
Right.
Fillers.
So you've got the thing that's paying your bills on
a
the
little.
side.
I did
bit,
some
right.
of that freelance, but try not to let too much of it interfere with, you know, first my identity. Like I really do think it's important. Like I was talking about, you know, writing a novel. I wasn't one of those people that, oh no, if you talk about it, you'll hex it. I believe the more you talk about it, the more you feel like you're writing a novel. Plus, you've now kind of made yourself have to finish it because you've told like everybody you know that you're writing a novel, and you know, you kind of quartered yourself into finishing it. But you also get yourself feeling like I'm writing a novel. I am a novelist, you know, versus like I'm not a novelist. I haven't, you know, I'm writing a novel. So I was done my day at MTV, got into the elevator with somebody that I only quasi sort of know, and I'm a friendly person. So I said, "Hey, what's new with you?" And he said, "Oh, blah blah blah. What's new with you?" And in my enthusiasm, I said, "I just finished my novel." And he said, "Do you have an agent yet?" I said, "No." He said, "Do you want one?" I'm like, sure. So by the time we landed in the lobby, I had an agent's name and phone number. I joke if MTV was located on the 3rd floor instead of the 24th floor, I wouldn't be published because of the conversation that took like 24 floors to get to, you know.
Right.
And that's, you know, I say in some of the business books that I write, the more people you know, the luckier you are. You know, don't be afraid to talk to strangers. Mom was wrong, talk to strangers.
I mean, it's like there's a certain amount of luck in everything that you do, and especially in business, but luck is so much also a relationship or a fundamental sort of like connection between the size and the context and the nature of, and the quality of your relationships and your network.
Yes, completely.
So you end up with an agent because the elevator ride was a longer elevator ride.
Yes.
And obviously there was something bigger at play there.
Who knows, yeah.
Right.
It was someone I only kind of sort of knew. It wasn't like, you know, like a close buddy, you know, so I just started talking. And then the agent, when we sent out the book, we sent it out on a Friday, and the agent and I concocted this little fun thing where we included, it was during the summer that we sent it out, and we included a beach towel and sunscreen, saying, read this over the weekend on the beach. You know, this is a great, you know, beach read.
Right.
And then we sent it out on a Friday, and I got my offer on a Wednesday.
Wow.
So I sold
Lightning
it
fast.
like that. You know, so I don't know what that is, but that was, you know, part luck also, because, you know, sending it to the right editor. I don't always sell my books that quickly, so that one was a good one. And then after we sold it, my book agent wanted to try to sell it to the movies, but he didn't really have experience selling books to the movies. But I was so grateful that he sold my first book that I gave him the opportunity. But a year went by and he hadn't sold it to Hollywood. So he said, you know what, Karen, you should get a real film agent. So I got a real film agent, somebody at ICM, and he read the book and he said, I love this, but a year's gone by, now the book is stale. Write something else for me to sell to the movies. I'm like, no, I did all this work on my novel. I believe in this novel. And he said, look, you're a good writer. Write something else. So I didn't want to give up.
Had the book come out by then?
Oh yeah, it came out from St. Martin's Press.
Got it.
And it did well for a first book. I mean, it had good numbers
Right.
and everything like that. And so what happened was I kept calling him and saying, why don't we call up this actress who would be great for the lead, or this director? And he kept saying, write something new, write something new. So I joke, this is sort of my cockroach theory on success. You know how cockroaches just won't die, their enthusiasm for being here in this planet.
I like that, the cockroach theory of success.
You keep spraying it and it just keeps, it wipes off its antennae. So he'd go, write something new, write something new. I'm not going to, I'd wipe off my antenna. Well, finally I call him up on the phone and I go, Marisa Tomei, because I saw that she was performing at a theater near me called Naked Angels. Send the novel to Marisa Tomei. She's perfect to play the lead character, who was like this dark-haired sort of ethnic girl. God knows where I came up with this idea. And he's, write something new, write something new. So I wiped off my antennae, and then I wrote a little note to Marisa Tomei, and I took my novel, I dropped it off at the theater for her to read, and all my friends teased me. And then a couple months later, somebody called me on the phone in the morning. I remember I was eating a bagel, and I remember thinking, somebody called me on the phone and said, hi, it's Marisa Tomei. And I thought, this is someone just mocking me for my belief that Marisa Tomei is
friends,
good.
Right? Just playing it.
Yeah. He was like, hi, it's Marisa Tomei. I'm like chewing my bagel. I'm like, okay, very funny. And then I thought, well, maybe just in case it is Marisa Tomei, I should stop chewing my bagel in this person's ear on the phone. So I stopped chewing, and it was Marisa Tomei. She said, I read your novel. I love it. I want to bring it to Miramax to be a movie. So that's how I sold my novel to Miramax. So, you know, everything that has ever happened, it's because I go like a little extra.
Right.
You know, I say that.
But I mean, I think what you consider a little extra, a lot of people would consider a lot of extra.
A lot of extra?
I mean, like, because you keep going at it and going at it and going at it and going at it. And it's like, if you know in your heart, like, this is good, and then you're like, I know who needs to play this, I know. It's like, you won't give up. So you know, like, a lot of people would have said when the agent's like, write something new, say, well, the agent knows best. I don't know this world. I'll write something new. But you're like, no. And then when the person, you know, gets into your head, a lot of people would say, well, let me tell the agent. And the agent says no. And they would just say, okay, you know, that's it. But you're like, no, let me go directly to her. Let me find where she is in New York City and actually get the book in her hands. I think there's this level of like almost just dogged commitment to making something happen that I think so many people, they come so close to. And like that final effort to just kind of like push past whatever the resistance that's there. So many people back away at that moment where they're so close to actually getting something extraordinary. And it seems like you've consistently over and over and over, it's like you won't back away from that moment. Yeah. I stay in a passionate state. So I just stay excited about the project. I think that's part of it. You know, I don't dip into that place where you talked about of, you know, I don't let myself, I feel like, you know, there is a solution out there. Like, let me find it. Like, out there will be somebody that wants to buy this. Who is that person? Like, it's an adventure. Let me figure out, you know. So from there, so that your first book sold the first movie rights, and then we go from there to current day, where between then and now, over 1 million books sold. You're involved in like a whole bunch of different projects. Along the way of those books, how many total books do you have out now, by the way? Like, a lot? A lot,
yeah. I think the official number is a lot. Like, I think I might have reached 30. Okay. I think I'm at 30 books. Some of them are little thin board books, you know, for kids. Like I did Baby's First Art Words. Like, wouldn't you be a proud parent if your baby's first words were not mama and daddy, but moma and dada, you know, and Dolly, like Salvador Dali, or and Baby's First Fashion Words. So, you know, those are just board books. So, you know, that's kind of how you can get a book done quickly.
So I want to dive into some of like the books that really you feel define you and you're most passionate about. But going from when you're writing that first fiction book, like we were saying before, there's a certain amount of foreshadowing of philosophy and ideology and positive psychology and happiness and sort of like self-help, personal development.
Yeah.
How do you make the leap then? Because if you have a fiction book sold, for a lot of authors, you either write fiction or you write nonfiction. And like just because you sold the book in one genre doesn't mean that you can easily jump to the other side. In fact, usually people will really want to just keep you, in that one classification. So how do you make that big leap into sort of a string of books that are radically different?
It was actually my agent's idea. I was because I'd sold my book to Miramax and and everything, and then I did a humor book that, I mean, even that was different, that came out, and that became a huge bestseller and sold like 400,000 copies.
Which one was that?
With a very feisty title. Called,
we can say anything here, by the way.
Called How to Make Your Man Behave in 21 Days or Less Using the Secrets of Professional Dog Trainers. So that was my big
that sold
seller.
400,000 or so
400,000. Sold in Korea, where they eat dog, so it's like How to Make Your Man Behave using dog trainers. They eat. Well, anyway, I don't know. It's sold in countries that I wouldn't think would get my sense of humor, and they did. And so because of that, and then that got optioned, but didn't get made into a movie. But I was giving seminars at all these different, particular women's organizations, mostly women's organizations, on how to pursue and snag your passion. And I was about to give one to the Women's Jewish Federation in Philadelphia. I think my sister-in-law set it up for me. And I was on the phone with my agent right before, and as a joke, I said to her, I've got to go. I have to give my How to Succeed in Business Without a Penis seminar. And she laughed, and she said, you should write a business book with that title. And then I laughed. I'm like, oh, please. And then she stayed on me. So I wrote a business book with that title, and then that became a big bestseller. Sold about 200,000 copies in a bunch of different countries and everything. So from business books to self-help books was less of a leap, if that makes sense to you. It was sort of like, once I started writing the business books, which are self-help for business, I went into self-help.
So, and what's kind of interesting too is that clearly there's some big common threads, and even between your past career, like advertising and writing, because you are extraordinary at coining, taking an idea and turning it into a sentence or word or a title that just becomes a zeitgeist, and like everybody, it captures an energy that a lot of people sort of tap into.
Oh, thank you.
And I mean, it's a gift, and I guess to a certain extent,
a curse.
a curse. No, I was going to say it's something a lot of people really, that takes a lot of work. But do you think that that's something that was always a part of you, or something that the advertising world? Because I'm always curious about, like, when people make huge career shifts, how they take skill set that they've been developing in this one career and just completely leverage it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can take the girl out of the ad agency, but you can't take the ad agency out of the girl. In some ways, it gave me like a little mini MBA into marketing, being in advertising and marketing my books, and knowing the power of a good headline is like the power of a good title and the power of a good cover, because people do judge books a little bit by their covers. They do. So I always wanted to have like a strong cover, and I started to design my books without knowing that there was like a career called book packaging. I became a book packager. So even to sell How to Make Your Man Behave in 21 Days or Less Using the Secrets of Professional Dog Trainers also has a story like that, where I had just written up the book as a written proposal, and my agent wasn't kind of into it. He didn't see it. So I thought, oh, I used to be in advertising. I can see this. I grabbed an illustrator, and we art directed the book from beginning to end with the illustrations in. So we packaged the book, and from my agent sending it out and not selling it, I packaged the book from beginning to end, and then we sold it. So I kind of...
so again, also, it's this other example of people saying no, and you believing in your heart this must happen.
Exactly.
And say, I can see it in my mind, like, I'm going to do this. And you make it, manifest it into reality, basically.
It's kind of been like that for a while now. Even with, like, How to Be Happy, Damn It was one of my bestsellers, and my agent at that point, who had the one that got me to do the business book, she couldn't see How to Be Happy, Damn It. She couldn't see it. So then I threw her another book idea, and she didn't see that one. and then another. And I won't say all the titles out loud, but anyway, she didn't see them. So I got different teams of illustrators and designers together, and I did a little satellite group. This is how I did so many books so quickly. And I got everybody to start different books, and I wound up selling all of those books. And I did, I think it was 6 books. My best year, I think I did 6 books in 1 year. I wrote, art directed, and sold them, because we pre-packaged them. So when it landed, my belief is that publishers, or people in general, are fearful and lazy. So when they get the book proposal, they're like, uh-oh, will this sell? I don't know. Lazy, I can't really visualize what it looks like. It's just words here. So if you make it easy and you go, this is what it looks like. So you take a little of the fear out, because they're like, oh, so this is what it would look like finished.
Right.
And the lazy, because, oh, this is what it, then you have a better chance of selling the book. So I just pre-packaged the books, and that's how I sold them.
Which, I mean, is interesting too, because in the, one of the allures, so for those not in publishing, fiction books, you generally have to write the whole book first, and then you sell it. And that's why a lot of fiction writers freak out, because they're like, I'm going to spend a year or a couple of years writing, I have no idea if I'm going to sell it.
Right.
So one of the benefits of writing nonfiction, a lot of people say, is that, well, I just have to write a proposal, and then you sell the proposal, and then you get money, and then you so you're getting paid while you're writing the book. So what's interesting is that you sort of took that and you reversed it, and you said, you know what, I believe in what I'm doing so much, and so many different projects simultaneously, that even if people don't see it, and even if they don't get it yet, I'm willing to actually put my money where my mouth is and do this myself. Because at this point, you're paying to package them yourself?
No, I set up a deal that was wildly tempting and generous. Like, for example, How to Be Happy, Damn It.
Right.
I told the guy, it was like, some people think it was too generous, but I said, let's split everything 50-50. We sell the book. And so I didn't even make myself the bigger person in it.
Right.
We just,
so the designer for it, or the person
worked,
doing it.
but I also creative direct. But to do that many books, I had a specific designer, but we worked together. What I'd do is I would say, I'd write the words knowing what the pictures would be. And I'd say, this spread has a double-page spread of flowers, and and then I'd let him sort of do what it would be, and then I'd come over and we'd tweak it. I was his creative director.
So essentially, so you're the creative director, but also the same. It's like you're a business partner with this person too.
Yeah, and so he was taking a risk with me.
Right.
So I managed to do 6 books at the same time, but I didn't put any money on the line. I just put my time on the line.
So all 6 books was this
gave
some
wildly
variation
generous
of that
back end.
Interesting.
So I didn't make as much money as I could have.
But you were able to take 6 projects and bring them to
life without putting any money out there. So
I love that. I mean, because it just shows. And what's so cool is that, especially in the way that the publishing industry is going right now, so many people are trying to figure out, how do I mean, now there are a lot of different opportunities that people didn't have even a couple years ago.
Oh yeah.
But still, it's like you're essentially looking at each book as almost like a mini joint venture business.
That's how I felt. I did. I felt like they were like my little business partners, and we were entrepreneurs, and books were our widgets, so to speak. And then I promised him, if we did more, that was How to Be Happy, Damn It, that one. If we did more Damn It books, that we were in this for the long haul. We wound up doing
the Damn It franchise.
We did 3 Damn It. It was the Damn It Empire, actually, I call it, because they became. That was another one of my bestsellers. That one, I think, might have reached 250,000 copies sold, the How to Be Happy, Damn It book.
So, I mean, it's really fascinating. I think one of the keys is what you said also, which is that a lot of people, I think, in that scenario would have said, okay, if this hits really big, if we sell hundreds of thousands of copies, it's actually going to be worth a lot of money. I don't want to give up half of that or a substantial chunk of that to somebody who's, just my designer. And you kind of turn that around and said, let me be as generous as I can possibly be up front. And I know that this person may end up getting paid financially, way more than they would have gotten paid if I was just hiring a designer. But
well, I'll tell you something. It made him be more invested, and I am a perfectionist. And we, for that book in particular, God knows how many hours we put into that book together, sitting there. And he was meticulous too. I was a perfectionist working with a perfectionist, So every line and which font and which headline, because he was now my partner in it. So he really cared. And many years before, when I had left advertising and I was freelancing, I worked with a guy named Lee Hunt, and he was always very generous in paying me. And he said, I want you to be at your happiest because I think happy people do the best work. So he was always, and it stayed with me. And so, you know, I didn't want to, like, you know, give people a flat fee and then it would be, you know, my flat fee that I could afford, you know, at that point. I figured this will really get them excited. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
So.
And which is an amazing way to operate in the world, you know. And I think people become so much more vested, like you said, when you do that. I mean, they're at risk also. You know, they're putting in a lot, and you know,
he was putting in a lot. He
and
needed
burns.
to make sure that
Right.
his hours got earned out, and that he had like a really big end benefit. There's no way he would have put in that amount of time for a flat fee. Definitely not. You know. And I think it was fun. It's nice when you feel like you're in it together, and then, you know, you get to jump up and down, like when it's, you know, it became Urban Outfitters' best-selling book, you know, 2 years in a row, and I had someone to do like a little happy dance with,
Right.
you know, and everything. So
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, what's interesting now too is that, you know, you had those 6 projects going on simultaneously then, and eventually they all get sold to a publisher. Now, I mean, so many options for publishing. So you could still sell them back to a publisher, or you could say, I'm going to do 6, you know, like crowdsourced funding project or Kickstarter project or this or that.
Yeah.
Or put it out myself. So it just seems like the opportunities to do things like that in the world that you and I both live in today has expanded exponentially.
Definitely.
It's funny because I think, you know, all of the sort of shaking in the world of publishing is freaking out a lot of authors. But I think when you look at actually, when you stand back and say, like, for someone like you who's already, you've always approached books themselves as sort of like, you know, a mini business project. It's kind of like you look at, okay, now there are just more possibilities and avenues of distribution, avenues of funding.
Plus, I like being an innovator. I like, you know, so when something new is going to happen, it's like I'm one of those people that are like, ooh, how do I get my creativity on this?
Yeah.
You know, so I kind of want to stretch myself, and so the fact that the world is changing gets exciting for me, you know, because quite frankly, after you've done a lot of books, it's like there's a part of me that wants to stretch. Like, you know, if it's just going to be another book, it's not, doesn't get my inner creative person as excited. Like, I need to stretch. So the fact that the world is making me stretch is actually a good thing.
Yeah. I want to talk about some of your more recent projects, and actually you have a really cool, fun book, you know, sort of the most current one. What is it about, you said you just love to create. How does it make you feel? What is it about bringing something to life that makes you wake up in the morning saying, like, this is what I have to do?
I just get so, I love creating. I like not even knowing what it's going to be. Like in the morning, I now wake up and I do posters every morning for Facebook. So that's kind of where I've landed, is taking my advertising background and as a creative director and a writer, and I now, on my own without a designer, just I wake up in the morning and I do a poster which has a message, an inspirational message. I call them inspirational flashcards, you know,
Right.
and I put them up on Facebook, and I never know what it's going to be. And it's such a great way to start my morning, using the creativity to come up with this message and then share it and then connect with people through it. But I don't even know what it's going to be. I guess it's the unknown. I don't know how to explain why that excites me, but it does. If there's a morning that I don't, like, something has to happen, like the babysitter arrived late, and, you know, or something like that, and I can't do it, I feel like a little off. The way that you go to the gym, you feel peppier. I do a little creative thing in the morning and I feel peppier. And if you don't go to the gym, you can still do your day, but you're just like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's sort of like that. It's like a gym. Creativity is like kind of a gym for my brain neurons.
So it's almost
you know?
like it gets you in that state, and like first thing in the morning when you get
It
up.
does. It really does. And people have said to me, God, Karen, you're so disciplined. You know, look, you have 30 books, or look, you know, you do X, Y, or Z. I don't see it as discipline because I'm doing something that I'm passionate about. And that's what I kind of call my Haagen-Dazs theory on productivity. That if I gave you a pint of Haagen-Dazs, do you like Haagen-Dazs? Because I guess it can only be a Haagen-Dazs theory if you like Haagen-Dazs.
I haven't had it in years, but I do recall being pretty fond.
Okay. So if I said to you, here's a pint, what's your favorite flavor?
Would have been.
It can be Ben and Jerry's. I'm not brand partial here.
Pralines and cream.
Which one?
Pralines and cream.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Okay. Here, Jonathan, here's a pint of pralines and cream. I'm going out for a half an hour. I want that whole pint gone to the bottom when I get back. Now go. And I come back in a half an hour and you finished it. Wow, you were so disciplined. You kept spooning. No, because you're enjoying it. And someone actually said that you could eat an entire pint. You know, that's sort of like what it's for me for doing my creative projects. I lose myself in it. In fact, I think it requires discipline to pull me away. Karen, let's step away from the computer now. You know, that's the discipline part, because I'm in the zone. I'm just so enjoying it.
So this is really fascinating, right? Because I'm a similar way, and I think a lot of just people who are the hyper creatives are really similar. We're both parents, right? And there are times where I can slip into that and I just want to keep doing what I'm doing and doing and doing and doing. And I think a lot of creatives, super creatives, go to that place, and then where you almost like you can go into that place where you kind of forget the world around you. But as a parent, you need to come back and have you sort of explored the dance between being present and engaged as a mom and wanting to be with your son but simultaneously like absolutely loving and devouring what you do professionally and sort of like figuring out how to do that?
Yeah, I know. It's a new one for me because my little guy's only 2 years old. So you're a little ahead in that dance. I'm still kind of maybe tripping a little as I do the dance. But I think it's good for him to see, a mom who has a passion.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way that I feel also. And
also, I want my little guy to grow up with the philosophy of anything is possible. You want to do books? It's possible. You want to do posters? It's possible. So I want him to feel like he can, his passion can become a way that he can make a living. So I think that that's a good thing for him to see. And the more energy I have when I'm with him, so there's a lot of that. And I bring him in, I show him now, because he's old enough to kind of understand, look what mommy's creating, it has little pictures on it, so I'm kind of bringing him in to that a little bit.
That's very cool. You brought up the Facebook posters that you do. Which I guess you've been doing for about a year now or something like that?
It was right after he was born.
So about 2 years then.
It was about 6 months, so a year and a half. Yeah,
Okay.
It was like a little after. I was trying to write a book, and I had mommy brain. Now I did. I couldn't concentrate, and but I found that when I would do a poster, I could get into it faster, quicker, better. But the longer stuff of writing, my brain was just a little different after I gave birth. I don't know what it was. So I started doing the posters as a solution to wanting to do something with creativity.
Because it was like a short hit, like a
short hit.
Yeah.
And I think also in the very beginning, I didn't know what my balance was time-wise with him too. So this was, I could have that satisfaction of finishing the poster, So there's a combination of things that made doing the posters very appealing. And also I think we live in a time-scarce world, so the recipients of self-help were grateful that they had this, quick solution for a quick hit of inspiration. Don't have time to read an entire self-help book? Read a poster. You always have time to read a poster.
Right.
So when I started putting them up, people were responding and then sharing them. And then, one thing led to the other. I started creating more, and then it kind of just really grew.
It's like a movement.
My Facebook fan page is growing so quickly. I now have, when I first started, it was a new fan page, and I had like 1,000 people, like nothing. And now I have like 66,000, I think is my latest count of fans.
So these days you're just, and you put up a couple of posters a day now, right?
I try to put up at least one a day, and then I can sometimes do 3 a day, sometimes.
So this starts as something where you need a creative outlet because that's what you live and breathe to do. But at the same time, being a mom has changed your time demands, your energy demands, or like your ability to focus for a certain amount of time. So this becomes your outlet. At that moment in time, do you see like a big future for these posters, or it's just the thing that, you know, it's something that you stumble on that is working?
I do see a future. I do think we're living in
I have a feeling, because
Yeah.
you tend to like look really long and big.
Oh,
So what
thank you.
what are you, in your mind, you're like, when did you start realizing this is something, oh, this is working, I can do this, and people are responding? What are you thinking? Where's this going?
Well, I just sold a book to Random House of my posters that's coming out on October 2nd.
So, book.
So so I
Right.
turned it into a book.
Which, by the way, we have
Instant Happy,
Instant Happy.
10-second attitude makeovers.
Super duper cool. We'll give you guys a link to that.
And then I'm doing an anti-bullying campaign for schools with my posters.
Tell me how that came about.
I reached out to a school in Vegas, and I told them I just got a lead on a school. So I approached the school and told them I wanted to do anti-bullying posters, and they asked to see some, so I started to create them, and they're now going to put them up in 16 schools in Vegas. And I'm really excited because I'm going to start to reach out to, I'm not shy, so I'm going to cold call some other schools and see if I can get this across the country with the messages. And it's interesting because an anti-bully message shows up in so many forms, because unfortunately it's about so many different issues, why people bully. And it's about how to deal with anxiety, anger, jealousy, self-love, the message of kindness, all of that.
Right.
And so I'm coming at the anti-bullying message from a lot of core values. So I do see creating anti-bullying curriculum and core value curriculum for kids. And posters are a quick hit, so to answer.
So it's kind of fascinating. So you're, instead of saying like, hey, bring all the kids into a classroom, we're going to spend a half day talking about anti-bullying, you're kind of saying let's chop the curriculum into dozens of like little bite-sized messages.
And by messages, to get back to even what my flavor of the, my brand is, it's self-help for people who wouldn't be caught dead doing self-help.
Right.
So, I started off writing funny stuff, and it's still funny. It's kind of a mixture of, I'm serious but I'm joking. So it's a little bit of both. It has serious messages delivered with a little feisty humor and stylish graphics and
and with the anti-bullying curriculum, I mean, it's really, it sounds like it's really, you're taking a bunch of posters and turning it into more of a curriculum.
Yeah, and a voice that kids won't feel like you're preaching. And nowhere on it does it actually say, anti-bullying. It's like words that, you look at it and you're like, oh, this is an anti-bullying, like the messages in them.
So it goes more to sort of like the elements of what lead to or what underlie or drive the bullying behavior. Speaking to them. Very cool. So what starts out then as your creative outlet after becoming a new mom, now turns into a book from Random House, anti-bullying campaign, using all the posters and your creativity to do that. And
I sell my posters on my site. I have a shop, and I put my posters on T-shirts and coffee mugs and all kinds of stuff. And I'm looking into licensing my posters for all kinds of products. I want to.
So this is turning into a whole new business venture.
Yes.
Huh. That's amazing. Which I mean, I love to see how you dance from one idea to how do I build this out. And also, I think what's amazing what you've done with the posters also is that you've been able to leverage, by sharing them for free online, you get, and tell me how much this plays into what you create and how you create, because I'm curious. You get a lot of feedback on the posters. I mean, you get like hundreds of comments, and you get like, sometimes hundreds and thousands of shares on these things. So it gives you a tremendous amount of feedback when you're creating these. Does that factor into what you do, or do you basically just create what's in your head and you feel like you need to create?
No, it does. I feel like it's a conversation really on Facebook. It really is. And when a poster really hits, I love reading the comments. I love thinking to myself, wow, this is we all have this problem. Like it communicates to me, like, you know, I might have written it because I was thinking this or feeling this, but look, this is, you know, this is such a universal issue that we're all dealing with. And then it gets me curious to explore that more, you know, to keep the conversation going, you know. And I feel like I've gotten to really understand, it's, in some ways, it also has helped me, because if I'm having an issue and I realize, then I do a poster of it, because I do a lot of stuff that's kind of what's ever on my mind, and that many people respond. It's healing in some ways for me to go, oh, we all are going through this. This is something, it really is, this conversation, and then it makes me want to do more on that theme, you know, to keep that going.
So it's, I mean, simultaneously, it's healing for you. It's making a difference for other people. It's giving you substantial feedback about what to do next. And so from a business standpoint, it's actually amazing. Because it really helps to inform what's working and what's not working. I'm curious with, so the book, so Instant Happy, is that it's fundamentally, it's a collection of the posters? A collection of the posters,
some of the ones that, as you say, I get the feedback.
Right.
So some of the ones that were focus grouped, so to speak.
Right. So like the biggest, the ones that really
like the people
well.
Went like, oh my God, you know, you get a thanks, I needed to read that, or amen to this, you know, like that kind of thing. So some of those, and then some new ones, because, you know, I wanted to throw in some little surprise stuff.
So here's my curiosity with the book, because there's still this kind of wacky dance with traditional publishers, and this is Random House, so it's a traditional publisher, where they get really freaked out about you releasing your stuff for free online because it will cannibalize the book and nobody will buy the book. Were there conversations around that with this, or were they just like, this is proving the, you know, the viability of this, let's just roll with it?
Well, I haven't revealed which posters are in the book yet to people, so there has been some conversation about that. And we're giving out a free sample of it on my Facebook page that people can download, but they told me that I should stick to those posters only when I share. So they have, at this point, limited me telling people what's inside the book. So there has been some of that. And Redbook is putting in one of the spreads, and they told me that I'm definitely not supposed to share that poster. So they kind of have limited some of it.
Right, so there's still some restriction, but fundamentally they weren't concerned about, I mean, I
guess the fact that they had already appeared, they weren't concerned. No, that they weren't concerned.
Which is interesting, because when I was writing my last book, you know, one of the conversations from people was, well, you know, like, you blog about similar topics all the time and don't write too much about it, or don't share things that are too similar, which to me just didn't make sense, because people connect with an idea. A lot of times they want to connect with it and hold it and touch it and feel it. Especially with what you're doing with posters, with something so visual.
People have favorites. They, like, you know, sometimes, like I said, I try to do a new one. Today I didn't do a new one because it was a busy day. And I put up an old one. But people are like, oh, this is one of my favorites. Oh, I love this one. Happy to see it again. Like, they don't mind the repetition of it, you know, especially if it's something. Repetition works, so the more they hear it, they're like, oh, thank you.
How many times do people watch their favorite movie?
Now that I have a 2-year-old, I think I can answer that, you know,
a lot of times.
A lot of times.
I want to talk about one of your other books also, because I know it was really close to your heart, and I think it helped a lot of people, and called The Bounce Back Book. What was this book about, and why did you create that?
Like, all of my books are written from something that's kind of going on in my life on some level. And this happened after a challenging time in my life with sexual assault. And I was trying to figure out how to bounce back from it. And so I started reading everything I could about resiliency, psychology. And I'm the type of person that's like, there's got to be a reason for this, that this happened, and maybe I'm meant to try to, you know, figure out how I can bounce back so I can help other people to bounce back, you know. So I kind of made myself be sure to find a reason, and so doing found the reason, which was, you know, feeling like I was on a mission to write a book on resiliency psychology. And so I came up with the idea to write the book. and to put a symbolic red rubber cover on it and call it the Bounce Back book. So it has a red rubber cover on the outside, and inside are all kinds of resiliency psychology tools to help people bounce back from whatever happens to them. From, a lot of it is, universal to job loss, to a death, to a divorce or a breakup. It doesn't have to be for whatever I went through.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's the ability to turn a powerful, painful experience to try and, I don't know how sometimes people can do it, to basically say, okay, this was devastating on some level, but if you can find a higher purpose to help you process it,
It's a big tool,
yeah.
Finding meaning and purpose, in whatever you went through.
Nah.
So, and being a student, not a victim, and say, how much can I learn from this? One of the things I say in the book is that if you ask depressing questions, you'll get depressing answers. And what I mean by that is sometimes people go through a hard time and they wind up asking themselves depressing questions like, why me? Why didn't I? Oh, what if? There's no way you can answer that happily. But you can stop them and swap them for happier questions like, how can I grow from this? How is this a good thing in disguise? How am I going to be a better person because of this? So those are the questions you have to ask yourself. And I guess that's what I did, and that's how I got to the answer being write a book on resiliency psychology.
So when I ask you the question, in your mind, what does it mean to you to live a good life? What comes up?
To always be growing, to always be learning, to always be stretching in your relationships with others and yourself. One of my favorite philosophers is Aristotle, and I named my son Ari sort of as a wink to the name Aristotle, but I didn't name him Aristotle. He's on the birth certificate Ari. But I love a lot of Aristotle's thinking, and one of the things that Aristotle said is that he wrote a lot about happiness, and he said that the reason why people are so unhappy is they confuse pleasure for happiness. And pleasure is about kind of stimulating your ego or your body. So people that are out there doing things for their ego, even relationships that are about ego, love relationships even, we pick someone, money or beauty, not going to bring you true happiness. Or the body, you pick somebody just for the lust of it. All of these things to a certain degree, you're going to need. He said that some of these things can be means to getting to the ends, but you shouldn't make, money the ends in life. It's the means to get there. And the ends in life, what true happiness is about, is growing into your highest potential self. And he said that everything that happens in life that helps you to grow into your highest potential is what makes you happy. And sometimes that can have a time delay. So immediate gratification is like the ego and the body, like yum yum, that tastes good, or shopping, But things that bring you happiness often have a time delay, like learning to play the piano, or or writing a novel, or making a relationship strong, meaning you have to go through some of the challenging conversations, the courageous dialogues to get to the most deep intimacy. And that time delay, that if you're willing to go through that so you can grow. And so the difference between pleasure and happiness, pleasure is immediate gratification, and happiness is surrounding yourself with people, experiences, and habits that inspire you, challenge you, and motivate you to grow into your highest potential, your happiest self in the process.
I love that. I have to think on that for a little while now too.
Okay.
But that's good because it'll help me grow. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your time.
Oh, thank you.
It's been a great conversation.
Yeah.
So I'm Jonathan Fields. The guest today has been Karen Samuelson. We'll throw a bunch of links to where you can find her and her various creative outlets. Signing off for the Good Life Project.